to the Shamik podcast. I am your host, Monterey Martinez. This is the Shamik podcast, part shaman, part comic, and it's one healing podcast. We're here to do the damn thing. If you notice, I have these beautiful flowers next to me. My best friend, Laura Theed, she sent me these as a congratulatory word. Fuck, there's going to be so many clips of me being like, is this a word? There's just words that when I say out loud, because you don't really have to say word. There's some words you just never say. And then when you say them, you're like, wait a minute. Is that how you say that? I was told recently that I said alumni for alumni, but I'm pretty sure I only said it one time, but I could have been saying it for a lot of time, but I didn't go to college, so there should really be no reason why I would be saying alumni/alumni anyway. But I remember one time a comic, so in the Los Angeles comedy community, there's a website that we use that has all of our open mics, and it's called the Comedy Bureau, and I always said the Comedy Borough, and I was with another comic one time, and he's like, Bureau, it's Comedy Bureau. And I was like, yeah, but it's like Caribbean, Bureau. And he was like, no, nobody told you that. And I was like, no, nobody told me that. So I'm sure there's a lot of words that I've been saying wrong for a very long time. And I think it's all of your faults for not telling people right away when they say words wrong. Anyway, my best friend sent me these flowers to congratulate me on premiering my first episode. And so it's just nice to have a very thoughtful, considerate best friend. And it's nice to for your loved ones to see your effort and your work. But anyway, so today what I wanted to talk about, a theme or a subject that's kind of been heavy on my mind, is disappointment. And I think disappointment affects us in a lot of ways, and there's several categories of disappointment. There's the disappointment of life, of circumstances that you cannot help. There's disappointment of another person, whether it could be a stranger, like you're like, you just watch this video of some woman beating a dog. I know it's crazy, but I've seen videos doing that. It's disgusting. But anyway, you're like, it could be disappointment for a stranger. It could be disappointment for someone who's close in your life, whether it's a coworker, a person you're dating, an ex, a roommate, whatever. And then there's disappointment with yourself. And I think disappointment falls under the section, again, where we talked about last time, of like having rage or having depression, or you know what I mean, these uncomfortable feelings that we kind of just want to push to the side and sweep to the rug. Disappointment is a thing that we all deal with, again, whether it's disappointment in ourselves or disappointment with, the people in our lives, or disappointment from how society is operating, and you're like, this is so disappointing that these things are considered normal that are going on, like sweatshops or whatever. We all know it's happening. We all know it's a thing. We're all enjoying our iPhones and our cameras and our laptops. Do people still have iPods? I don't know. But, we're all enjoying this technological advancement, but we know the work and the abuse and the stress, the neglect, the unfairness that goes into these things, but we're all just like, oh, well, that's society. That's how these things work. And I think the more and more, people prioritized the collective's health or well-being versus making their life easier, then maybe society would be a little bit nicer of a place. But what do I know? I'm literally shooting this on the footage that I just talked about. But it sucks. There's times where like I feel bad about that shit. Like for the longest time, I literally would never, I still tend not to, but I wouldn't support any fast fashion. Like I mostly thrifted all of my clothes, or like went to vintage shops like Crossword, Buffalo Exchange, Goodwill, yada, yada, yada. I grew up on having to go to Salvation Army or Goodwill because we were poor. And And quick side note, I remember when Old Navy became popular and everybody was like, oh my God, I got this like new stuff at Old Navy. And I was like, oh, if people like Old Navy, Salvation Army must be like one and the same. And I was like, oh my God, like I got this from Salvation Army. And everybody was like, oh my God, you're poor. And I didn't know that Old Navy was not a thrift shop, because it sounds like it. And I was really disappointed because I was like, oh, like everybody's thrift shopping. Like, let's just be cool about this. Everybody was not thrift shopping. I had to learn the hard way. But anyway, I'm talking about disappointment and how, yes, being a part of society where sometimes you are participating in all the things that you know or feel are wrong. And I get hard on myself sometimes because it's like I know that I could be doing more, or I know that I could be more conscious, or I could be a better consumer, or I could investigate more of like where the things that I purchase come from to try and not support companies or systems that are immoral. But it's like a lot of the times, we put our priorities first of being like, well, I just need to save more money, or it's the most convenient. So, we're all hypocrites in some aspect or another, and we're all flawed in so many ways. So I don't think it's cool or fair to constantly condemn and point out other people's flaws. Unless you're like joking about it, then it's hilarious. But I think, at least addressing and acknowledging that these are problems and not putting necessary blame on people, because the people who come up with it and the people who are consuming it, it's like we're both at fault. Anyway, that was my rant on consumerism. Back to disappointment. So I'm going to share 3 stories or 3 examples of me facing disappointment and why I think it's actually important to receive disappointment, and like what you can learn from it and what you can gain from experiencing disappointing experiences. So the first story I'm going to start with is, I don't even know if this is a story. This is kind of just a matter of fact. But the first big disappointment that I feel like I experienced in my life, which I came to realize much later in my life, like how disappointed I was by this factor and how it really has like affected self-esteem or self-worth or, decision making. And again, all this information, super vulnerable, whatever. But again, I hope that I never had someone to be like, oh, okay, like this information is so useful, gobble, 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 that was me gobbling it up. So I hope that, one person and they're like, oh my God, that makes so much sense, whatever. So that's why I'm getting self-conscious, because I'm like, why am I telling all these stories? But I'm like, it serves a purpose. It might be 5 years and then I get traction one day. Who fucking knows? But whatever. God is telling me to fucking deliver. Okay. But so my first major disappointment that, like I said, I realized when I was older was having neglectful parents. I mentioned briefly, I think in the first episode, where I had very neglectful parents. My dad had struggled with substance abuse and physical abuse, I guess emotional abuse too. My mother, I don't know if she's ever been like clinically diagnosed. I don't know if that's a phrase, but whatever. I don't know if she's actually been diagnosed from a doctor, but she definitely has some sort of like chemical depression. Like there's something not there. So growing up, like I never like I when I say like I didn't have parents, it was almost like I was their parent. Like I definitely had to parent and pick my mother up and encourage her and like discipline her, or remind her of responsibility, or how to make better decisions. And it's like I shouldn't have to do that as a child. And then like with my dad, it was just constant like fear, and because he struggled with his own demons, he was like in and out of my life and wasn't always like a participating member. So, you know, my whole life growing up, like I never had a support system. I never had a foundation. Like I said, I moved around a lot. I wasn't in one school. You know, we would live with my mother's friends, or we would live in a shelter. We would live with my grandparents. We would switch back and forth between my mom and dad. They always had new partners. You know, we always lived in not good neighborhoods. My mom had a lot of sketchy people around. Like it was literally just, you know, chaos. And again, and when you're young, you don't know that this isn't what everybody's experiencing. You start to have little doses of it, like the first time you go to a slumber party or the first time you go to a birthday party, and you know, you are making excuses in your head like, oh, you must be rich in order to have a birthday party. Oh, you must be rich in order to have a car. You must be rich in order to go out to eat, because we never did those things. Like, and so, but then I'm seeing people who look, and, you know, they live in the same kind of situation I live in, like an apartment or, you know, in like a bad neighborhood, but they still had these things that I didn't have. And then I started to get to an age where I'm like, oh, maybe I have shitty parents. Like maybe my parents are bad, because I've talked to other people who've like grown up poor, and their parents still made an effort. They still, you know, would go to the Dollar Tree and buy a cake mix, or go to the Dollar Tree and get a bunch of little makeup and a little pink princess bag for them to open up, or they still hugged them every single night and said, I love you, I'm proud of you, or, you know, took notice of their interests and tried to like get them involved in it so their kids could explore their hobbies and their passions or whatever. And none of that was going down in my house. And I think I dealt with a lot of jealousy for a very long time, especially towards, kind of anybody, because I was like, it's not just the men that I dated, but I definitely, with my friends, I'd say more so with the men I dated, but it definitely happened with friends too. But like, I would be very jealous when, I would see that their parents were participating members in their life, or they buy them a new laptop for Christmas, or they could help them out with rent, or they send them packages, you know, just to get them through the month. They're like, here's some medicine and some soup, and, you know, here's a little Amazon gift card, and like whatever parents are doing. Here's your favorite peanut butter M&Ms, or, you know, and my mother literally only calls me when she's high on cocaine, and that's because her boyfriend is calling me. But like before that, my mother maybe calls me once a year, like never calls me to this day. And it, you know, there's time, I'm so used to it, but there's times where I see the whole of like where a parent should be, like whether it's like something to do with like taxes, or whether it's something to do with like a decision to be made, or whether it's just like I'm having a bad day and I'm just like, I hate myself that day, or I feel hopeless, or somebody dies, and like you just want someone to be like, hey, I love you no matter what. It's unconditional, and I believe in you, and I care about you, and I'm thinking about you, and just like knowing that unconditional love, like you don't have to be or do or gain or earn it. And if you don't have that from either parent, and my sister, I have a sister. Well, I have two brothers, two sisters. My one brother is like, he's just a free spirit. He's impossible to get a hold of. My other brother and sister, they grew up with their mother. I left to California when I was 19. So they were, wait, what? If I was 19, why are you counting?
12.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they were 12. No, because... So they were, wow, why can't we do this? So I'm 8 years older than them. So I was 19. So they were 11. Okay. Wow. So they were 11. And like I said, they grew up with their mom their whole entire life. I grew up with my mom. And like, so when I left, they were so young. So like, I didn't get to spend as much time with them to really like be there through like the very pivotal, like impressionable times in their life. So I always feel like I, have to do so much work to get to really know them on a psychological base, because I'm a psycho and I got to know everybody's ins and outs. But anyway, I feel like unconditional love, like true unconditional love and like peace, you can get it for yourself, but having that base of like having parents is incredibly important. It's incredibly necessary, and it's sad not to have. And I think again, for the longest time, I was just so used to it that I didn't even realize how sad I was about it. And then I would kind of get hard on myself, where I'm like, dude, I'm in my 30s, like get over it, like whatever, you don't, your parents were never in your life and they're not in your life, like c'est la vie. Again, I don't know if that phrase works in this context, but whatever. And so I'm just like, I'm bummed, because I see that there are so many different pathways that I could have taken, or I could have been led to, had I had, a coherent parent. One of them, I'm like, one of you can't get your shit together for like 5 years, just like 5 pivotal years. I mean, even at one point, my mother lived in Kentucky and I lived in New York with my dad. And like, same thing, like my mom like legit just like never called me. And my stepmom wouldn't let me call my mom, because who fucking knows. But anyway, so I just like literally never talked to my mom. And then my dad was just always like maniac drunk and very just psychotic. And like, his energy was scary to be around for the most part. And then once in a while, when he was like happy drunk, he would say nice things. But for the most part, it was very like, toxic behavior, like whether it's scolding me, like, like a lot of profanity, a lot of name calling, a lot of intense scolding. And before high school, my dad stopped hitting me like before I entered high school, because I literally told him to his face, I was like, I will call the cops on you. Go ahead. So my whole point was saying that sometimes I feel like I got robbed, or sometimes I feel like, it's hard for me to not like be mad about that, where I'm like, this is so unfair. Like, how come I couldn't have like one like normal parent? How come I couldn't have one person take care of me? How come I couldn't have one person protect me? Like, while, like I said, like I'm being hit by one parent, and then I go to another parent and their partner sexually abusing me. So I'm like, well, it looks like I'm safe nowhere. And it's a very suffocating feeling to feel like, home is not a safe, or it's not a free, or it's not a positive environment. So not only not to be positive, but to be, like I said, very scary and very traumatic. It's not a healthy way to grow up. And so when I got older, I just became, like I said, jealous of the people who did have those things. I was like jealous for a lot of years, and I didn't realize like my jealousy is really rooted in anger of feeling like unfair, because I'm disappointed by life, where I'm like, how can this be? Like, how do I not have one normal person? How do I not have like some sort of fucking like safety net? How do I not get a little bit of, at least make my parents rich? Like, I'm going through all that shit and I'm fucking poor, and I'm flat chested. I was like, give me a fucking break, and so I felt like this unfairness, and it made me feel like disappointed in life, to where I'm like, so this is just the world, like this is just how shit. But then I start thinking about it more, where I'm like, I'm seeing, the constant, just the constant reminders of like all these homeless people, all these sick people, all this, conflict in different countries. And I'm like, oh my God, where I start to get overwhelmed, where I'm like, life is so ugly. Life is so unfair. Life is so disgusting. Like, this is such a shitty place. Like, I don't want to be here. And like, I just was like, had this like filter again where I'm like, the world is not like, I get why people kill themselves. I'm not saying you should kill yourself, but I'm saying in that state of mind, like, that's where I was at, where I was like, I get it, man. Like, this is a really ugly place to be in. But then I realized for like every single disappointment that I had equally an amazing gift, or not me, like there has been a person, or there has been a thing, or there has been a moment that has, answered the disappointment. Like I don't have a good mom or a good dad, but I do have an amazing sister. I have my brothers, but I'm really close to the one. Okay. But I have an amazing sister, and I have an amazing backbone, and I have resilience, and I have the ability to constantly like transform and like rise from the ashes. And I have a belief in myself that is like unwavering. And I'm like, there's times where I'm like, people say to me like, oh, you shouldn't be thankful for all the bad things that happen to you, because there's times where, like I said in the last podcast, I'm like, yeah, like I wouldn't take back being raped. I wouldn't take back being beat. I wouldn't take back, a domestic abuse situation. I wouldn't take back my parents, having their issue. Like I wouldn't take any of it back, because I'd be scared that it would take away something from me. And I'm not saying that in order to have these good qualities you have to suffer, or in order to be resilient you have to go through pain, or I'm not saying that has to be the math, but for me that is my math. And I like that whenever my friends come to me, or whenever coworkers, anyone talks to me, I feel like I have this like Rolodex of information from having all these experiences. And even if it's not a similar or an exact replica of the situation that they're experiencing, I've had the roller coaster of so many emotions and so many moments in my life where I've had to like pivot and change and move on and push through, and like really just be challenged, and have seen the benefits of those disappointments, of those challenges, and getting past them. And I am a firm believer in, there's a phrase, I don't know if it's from the Bible or wherever the fuck it originated, but know thyself. And whenever we hear that, we're like, yeah, cool. Okay. I'm Monterey. Cool. Whatever. But no, like when you hear know thyself, it's a very powerful statement where, when, what are those people, football players? I was like, what are those people who just like keep falling on each other called? I'm kidding. I know football is athletic. I get it. But when a football team is playing against another team, how do they defeat their opponent is they watch tape. And the reason why they watch tape is they have to know like what they're up against. So it's not only just what you bring to the table, it's what's out there. And part of knowing yourself is not only knowing the things that make you fearful, the things that make you happy, the things that annoy you, the things that, trigger you. It's also knowing what is externally out there in the world that affects you. Because there's some shit that goes on where I'm like, I never thought of that, or, that doesn't bother me. But you need to know what in the world that's not your shit, but what bothers you. If you're the type of girl where you see hot chicks and it fucking just pisses you off, don't put yourself in situations. You should work on that. But what I'm saying is, until you do, don't put yourself in situations where you're going to see a bunch of hot chicks like half naked and you're pissed the whole entire night, and now you can't go dance on the dance floor because you're concerned about that. Whatever. That was a terrible example, but you know what I'm saying. So in order to beat the game of life, you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared and you have to be knowledgeable, not only about the information about you, but the information about the world and how it affects you. Some people, clearly politics makes them enraged, or it makes them incredibly emotional. And I tell people, I'm like, you shouldn't watch the news. And people are like, well, you have to watch the news. You have to know what's going on. No, you don't, because it is completely affecting your state of mind to where you are lashing out at people at work. Your anxiety is through the roof. You're occupying your time with vices because those are the things that make you feel good and they're completely harmful to you. And then you're in this vicious circle of nonsense because you didn't truly know thyself. So my best advice is to truly know yourself. Again, not just everything that's internal with you, but the things that affect you externally, because that's how you navigate and duck and weave and bob and sled, or you know what I'm saying. Bob and dive. But didn't I say duck and weave? Does duck and dodge? Fine, whatever. Duck and dodge, bob and weave. Whatevs. But so see your disappointments as your personal like resistance. So, when we work out at the gym, you could work out just doing squats, and eventually you're not going to grow, you're not going to gain, you're going to tap out. But how you end up growing that muscle is you have resistance, aka you add weight, and that's what builds it. And what is actually happening when you're building it, you're tearing the muscle and it's then having to repair itself, and that's how it builds bigger. So it's the same thing with us. So every single time you have a stress factor, you have a disappointment, you have a crazy life event, you have to start to wire yourself and reprogram yourself. And it sounds crazy, but living life the other way, I'm telling you, is so much crazier and so much more sad and lonely, that instead of being like taking things personal, like, well, my life sucks, or this is unfair, or, why is this happening to me? Do you think, one, anybody wants to be around that? Two, do you think that you're emitting this type of energy, or people are like, there's something about that girl? Or three, is that a fun way to feel? No. So it's like when you receive these setbacks, these disappointments, these events, you have to rewire your mind to say, okay, where's my gain? Like, what muscle is this giving me? So if you're just to like lift weights, you're like, is this going to my triceps? Is this going to my biceps? Is this going to my back? You gotta figure that out with a setback. If you go through a breakup and you're like, oh my God, like I can't be alone, blah, blah, blah. Maybe you do need to learn to be alone. Maybe you do need to have a sense of complete independence. Maybe you do have to go through this trajectory of being triumphant on your own. I don't know why I always count my words. Everybody notice that? So lock in every single time that you feel, you see that thing that's coming at you, and you're like, even if it's death, your grandma died, whatever, and you're like, fuck, there is a blessing, there is a muscle, there is something to gain from it. And, there's not one thing. Like I said, if I justified or made a solution for being like, this is my acceptance and my forgiveness of getting raped, like, or getting beat or getting whatever, it's like, you can do that too. And it's at some point, it's just a collection of choices. And I think some people have more choices to make in order for them to be on a path of, living in happiness, or like choosing a life that is like good for yourself. It is a choice at some point. And, some people have to work harder at it. And like, I know, like I'm one of, like, I have, people in my life or whatever, where I see it's naturally easier for them to be happy, or it's naturally easy for them to just be and be okay. But then, and I'm like, oh, fuck, like I have to do work. Like, I'm like, I have to meditate 2 times a day. I have to journal. I have to juice. I have to be on so much shit because I got a lot of demons. They're knocking on my fucking door and they wake me up like, hey, Monterey, remember that one time your dad choked you and your stepmom didn't call the cops and you were scared that you were going to die? And I'm like, good morning. Good morning. You know what I mean? Like I get, they just come out of nowhere, or you know what I mean? They're like, oh, look at that girl. Her parents love her. They bought her a car. Must be nice. Like they just say shit to me, and I'm like, ugh. So I have to work hard at it to be like, no, like get the fuck out my face. But sometimes it's like I'm like, all right, like I'm tempted by it. You know what I mean? I'm tempted because, like anything else, like sometimes hatred feels good. Like sometimes just like that, some cinnamon rolls feel good too. And you know it's shitty. You know it doesn't. There's no nutrients. There's no vitamins. There's nothing good for you in it. But you're like, oh my God. At that moment, it feels great. And then you feel like shit after it. That's how hatred feels. That's how, just doing anything that you know is not good for you. It's like, sometimes getting drunk and drunk dialing everybody and calling them a fucking cunt, whatever. Sometimes this shit feels good, but it's how long does it feel good? It's economics where you're like, okay, was the risk worth the reward? What's the the shit they teach you. I didn't take economics, but the shit is the value. Is it there? You know what I mean? And how long? So we all battle this disappointment, and you just have to make the right choices. And like I said, some people are going to make more choices. It's a constant, some people just have one demon pop up once a month, and some people, they have a demon every 5 minutes. Like, here, remember me? I'm here again. And you're like, fuck, you got to make the choice. Because if not, you'll have those disappointments or you'll have those setbacks. But again, even if you do, you could still find the blessing in it. But we're just trying to have it happen less, because life is going to give you disappointments. So try not to add to it by you providing more disappointments for yourself. That's it. It's like, I was going to say everybody's going to get a divorce. I didn't mean that. I mean, some people might get a divorce. Everybody's going to, deal with death in their family. Some people will get cancer. Some people, they'll tragically lose a child. I mean, whatever. I know this sounds really grim, but it's like fucking shit happens in this life that you cannot control. So you should be responsible for the things that you can control. And that's how you navigate disappointments. And that's how you make better decisions. Okay, and for the second disappointment, I said that it was when people disappoint you. And one thing to always take note that I've had to learn many, many times, I still learn it every 3 days, is to not take other people's choices, actions, decisions, disappointments personal. You will constantly be disappointed if you take other people's actions as a personal slight to you. I know you're laughing because I still battle this. I battle this all the time. And I know it's because of my fucking past or whatever that I'm always like, I always assume the worst in people because my own parents didn't care and neglected and hurt me. So I'm always assuming that when someone does disappoint me, it was intentional and they want to hurt me or they want to just be selfish and take care of themselves, and who cares about what happens to me. So that's the thing that I'm still battling with. But each time that I apply the knowledge that I know, because knowledge isn't just knowing something, you have to actually apply this shit. Because we all know love is the answer, and we all know, like, when it rains, it pours, whatever. There's all these cliche little sayings that we're very familiar with, but we don't ever actually put into action or apply when it's necessary. So, the times where I've been truly disappointed by a person, I've at some point in my life had to forgive, whether it was someone cheating or whether it was someone, dropping the ball and hurting me, whether it was someone betraying me. I've at some point had to forgive them because, like I said, when you bottle that shit up, it will eventually, manifest in a physical way, because that's where all disease and inflammation comes from. Is it comes from some chaos in your cells, and your cells get chaotic when your emotions are fucking, all in disarray. So, you know what I'm saying? But I had to forgive them, and when I start forgiving people, it did feel better. Now I'm rushing because I'm like, I have 2 minutes. A disappointment that I think a person, a disappointment that a person left me with, that I had to eventually come to forgiveness, was I had a person who came into my life who was a mentor and like a father figure, came in my life in my early 20s. And this person was acted like a father. I worked for him. I became very close to his wife and to his daughter, and they became like a family to me. I spent every holiday, Christmas, birthday. I tutored the daughter. I picked her up from school every day. Like, these people were my Los Angeles family. And I was like, you know what? Like, okay, whatever. I didn't have a family growing up. Well, I got one now, and they're fucking British, and they like to drink wine, and they're cool as shit. And then, years go by, and I'm not going to get into the whole details to respect other family, but, basically there was a legal situation that happened in the UK, and my manager was being extradited out of the country, and it would have been this whole downfall thing of his business, and he was scared that his wife wouldn't be able to financially keep up with the home and the business, so he ended up killing himself. And I remember, like, when that happened, I remember being so disappointed in life, but also disappointed in him, because I was like, dude, like, you left me. Like, you were the one person in my whole entire world that I felt like I could truly be my every single aspect inside of myself. I felt like I could be that in front of him, and I felt that he could reciprocate it, or I felt like he understood it, he appreciated it. And he was the first person to truly believe in me, where he's like, you have something, like, you are going to like do comedy and you're going to create content. And he's like, I believe in you. And he was my talent manager too. And so it's like, I felt like I lost my father, I lost my talent manager, I lost my best friend, I lost the guy who was like my father. And I was working for him as like an assistant. So it's like, I lost my job. And then the wife and daughter ended up moving back to the UK, and I was like, I just remember being so hopeless and so like depressed and just completely a mess. And I was like, man, like, how could you do this to me? Like, how could you know that, like, how important and influential and meaningful you were to me? How could you do that? And then, instead of seeing it through my perspective, through my shoes, through, my lens, I had to put myself in this person's shoes and be like, man, if someone went to that extent to where they thought that solved a problem, maybe, this person was truly going through something that I can't even fathom or imagine or anticipate. And, how selfish of me to demand that, like, my needs or my concerns, like, be answered for, when, this person had to feel that feeling and pull a trigger, and it made me more compassionate, and it made me more aware of just suicide in general. And now I'm someone who, like, I always not defend people who kill themselves, but where, people will call people who kill themselves like cowards or whatever. And I'm like, no. Like, how dare you? Like, you have no idea what this person is suffering. You have no idea the challenges and the difficulties of, people's what's going on behind closed doors. Like, some people it's sadness and mental illness, and some people it's some financial business shit, and you're like, ugh, I'm gonna do this, and my kids are gonna get my what's it called, my life, not life support, my life insurance, and that's the best decision that they can come to. And it's like, it is nobody's business to look at someone else's journey and take their decisions for their life that was, to them in their experience, the best solution they could come up with, and take it personal. And so I was like, I can't say that this person disappointed me. It's just, again, if I follow the breadcrumbs, it's not that this person disappointed me. It's just that I'm sad. It's just that I'm sad that I don't have this person in my life, that I thought I was going to have this person walk me down the aisle. I thought I was going to have this person, be there when I sold my first show, or when I won an award, or when I filmed my first special or something. I was like, I imagine this person being by my side day after day after day, navigating this industry, knowing that I was unconditionally loved and believed in and supported. And that was a really hard, realization to come to, but I hid it behind being like, you shouldn't have done that. Like, you disappointed me. Like, how dare you do that? And it's like, there's always something, the underlying real issue. And it's like, you just got to dig. And that was that sad story. And then the last disappointment is being disappointed in yourself. I'd say one of the biggest things that I have been disappointed in myself, where again, I really didn't realize, maybe kind of realize, but like really didn't, try to improve on, until the last couple years. But I'm very disappointed in myself with how I've navigated my love life. I realized that I was a person that supplemented the love I never received from parents by getting love from the men in my life. And that sounds like, oh, that's fine if you're, if two people love each other or whatever, but I didn't feel okay or valued, or I always felt strong, but it's weird because it's kind of this like dual thing where it's like, I've always been incredibly independent. I've always like lived on my own and just like handled things and just, roughed and toughed it and just like got shit done. But I owe the emotional love. So not like financial or not, not financial or not, like I wasn't like going on vacations or anything with these guys, but like the emotional like love and support, like I realized that I relied too much on the men in my life for, like, to the point where I probably put a lot of unnecessary pressure, and not like pressure like, you better marry me, motherfucker. I've had the opposite problem of that, but just a pressure of like, I need to feel so unconditionally loved and prioritized and special and validated and honored and fought for, and just this unnecessary expectation of like, where I'm putting the responsibility of like making me feel completely happy and good and filling a void that it's like they can't feel that shit. Like, I have to feel that shit because I have to reconcile the hurt and the pain of my own shit. But like, I subconsciously like put that on men for a long time, and I realized that like whenever I was sad or whenever I was hurt or whenever I was stressed, that like some people reach for sweets and some people reach for alcohol. Some people have one night stands. Like I'm like, I just want compliments. Like give me fucking compliments. And I would have like a string of men where I wasn't even like necessarily like dating these people. Some, maybe like a couple of them I was, but I would just have them like fluff me up where it's just like, I need love. Give it to me. Hello. Tell me I'm awesome. And then just like dispose of them when I don't need it or, yeah, that makes me sound like an asshole. But yeah, I was very selfish, in my love life, especially early on. And I was very, just ended up being neglectful. Everything that I hated from my parents, I ended up being like as a lover where, you know, I wasn't being a good teammate always. And I think that I definitely hurt a lot of men. And don't worry, I got my fair share back. No, but, I think that I was irresponsible with people's feelings and nurturement and care for me. And because I felt that I deserved it because I never had it, that I didn't have to be as like thoughtful about their heart or their feelings or what they needed. And, you know, there's one ex of mine. I don't know why I did that. Whatever. Anyway, but where I will every couple of years I will apologize to him where I'm like, hey, again, I'm so sorry. Like I am so sorry because I put this person through hell and because I couldn't just admit to myself that I wasn't in love with this person. I was in love with the fact that they loved me, that it made me feel needed and cared for. And that's not cool. And, you know, I recently had to really get out of that habit. But I think that I've hurt, you know, mostly every guy that I've dated, but not like not like I have cheated before. I'm not going to lie. They know. Okay. But anyway, yeah, I was irresponsible with my experiences and my bad representation of couples and relationships that instead of like improving on, I just kind of, you know, just did my own thing and it was just like, yeah, like I gotta, you know, I'm just doing the best I can. And it's like, I'm making myself sound way worse, but it's like, yes, I've always been like, I've always had intimate or like great conversations and like resolutions with everybody. But I think that, you know, I could have been more honest with myself by not being in committed relationships when I knew that I didn't reciprocate the same feelings that they felt for me, but because I needed the comfort or the love or, you know, the nurturing from them, that I continued relationships that I shouldn't have, and they didn't deserve to, you know, not have a partner that felt the same way about them as they did for me. I'm going to edit all that out. Just kidding. But yeah, so that's this week's, gem drops, is navigating disappointment. And like I said, know thyself and know yourself internally and know the world externally so you can navigate, you know, watch the plays. If you need to beat the game of life, you have to know what your opponent is and you have to know how to match up to your opponent. Because if you can't reach decisions every day to navigate in a way that you know is going to be the most beneficial for you, it's going to take two choices to throw your whole entire life off. You know what I mean? It happens as easy. You're like, you know, not to drink and drive. And you're like, whatever. It's right around the corner. You drink and drive that one time, you get a fucking DUI, and then, your shit gets fucked up. So what I'm saying is disappointments will happen, okay, that you have no control over. Try not to add to it by being a disappointment to yourself by the choices that you make. Am I making sense? I think I am. Am I making sense? Yeah. Okay, so that's gem drops. Hope you got something out of it. So for today, for Comedium, I went through my spiritual notebook or whatever, and a topic that stood out to me that I always want to talk about is gratitude. I know when everybody hears gratitude, they're like, okay, here we go. I know. Be thankful. Life is so awesome. Thank you, God, for everything that I have, blah, 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 blah. And no, you're wrong. Yes, it's nice to be grateful, blah, blah, blah. But you need to know why gratitude is important, and you need to know what is happening when you are grateful. So gratitude, when people say be grateful, now it's just, it has taken on a whole new meaning that we all just loosely use, and it's not in the right context. But when people say be grateful, in its truest essence is to help you. So it's to help you because, so if we take a chart of all the emotions that we feel, right? We have like fear, resentment, anger, hate, whatever. We have all these negative ones on the bottom. And then in the middle, we have contentment, complacency, whatever, some more middle shit. And then at the top, you have joy and gratitude and love and peace, whatever. So this whole entire spectrum, now remember what we said about vibrations. So again, we're going to say subatomic level, but everything in its smallest particle form, broken down into the babyest parts of science is a vibration, right? So and this is a scale. They have Harvard and all these other fucking schools and shit have done the research where you could see the actual, reports and charts that talk about this shit, where they have somebody, I forget how they measure it, but basically like they show like fear and anger, and like the vibrations are like these very short, like little stout, little things going up and down. And then like love and joy, it's all like woo, it's all like happy and loose or whatever. So when you feel the worst vibrations, again, remember you're trying to get your vibration up so you could turn your brain into a receptor so you can receive messages, you can receive epiphanies, you can receive, love easier. But when you're at these negative vibrations, shit's not coming in. So when people say show gratitude, be grateful, it is a motherfucking like path they're giving you. It's not like be grateful, you're being a brat, just like be happy for what you have. It's like no. Be grateful, because that's one way to raise your vibration so you could get out of the negative, ugly state that you are in that is preventing you from actually hormonally being able to be okay. Because when you're in the negative, shitty state, again, like neurologically, not like your mood, like neurologically, when you're in a state of hatred and grief and whatever, your hormones have to be sent to go fix that. And when your hormones are all being sent to go fix that, guess what? They're not doing all the other shit they're supposed to be doing, because they're all now, you know what I mean? It's like a fucking, somebody gets injured and all of a sudden everybody's paying attention to that. And you're like, when you watch gymnastics, the one girl falls and the other girl's on the balance beam. Like, hello, I'm still doing all these tricks and not landing on my fucking head on a 4-inch wide fucking beam. And everybody's like, yeah, but this girl fell, so everybody's on this. That's what's going on neurologically in your body. Everyone's paying attention, trying to fight off the fucked up shit, and then you don't get to receive the high up shit. and then ain't nothing penetrating through. So be grateful is another way of saying, hey, we're trying to get you into this state of mind so you could get the benefits that are up here. And people think that, like, yeah, of course, in spiritual context, when people are like, be love, be peace, be grateful. Yes, those are all good qualities to have. But no, it's because there's something on the other side of it. If you can't get to peace, you can't receive messages, or you can't, again, get an epiphany, or you can't come up with that new awesome idea for a book or a movie or whatever, because you are not in the state of mind that produces creativity, that produces love, or that could see an opportunity coming into your life. So it's not just mumbo jumbo of like, you should be nice. Well, peace is great and, joy is everything. It's like, no, bitch, it's because that is a math problem. You get this? Guess what? X is behind the fucking corner, and you don't know what that is, but it's some sort of blessing or some sort of, opportunity or person or experience that's waiting for you. But guess what? You're fucking down here. So be grateful. Be grateful so you can get in a better state of mind so you could receive what's on the other end of the door, on the other side of the door. Again, this is all fucking science. You can look it up, all right? Just look up fucking neuroscientists combined with spirituality and you'll see it. Joe Dispenza is a great guy. Andrew Huberman, great person. There's another guy that I always fucking quote and I forget, but it's like there's so much research on this and it's like, stop denying that it's real, okay? Get your life together. I just punched myself in the face. But be grateful, because it's one way to get you there. And that was one of the messages that I received, that I wrote down, and I was like, you know what? I think people need to know this, and hopefully that helped you. The last segment we have is Soul Prescription. And if you've never watched the podcast before, Soul Prescription is where I pull an angel card, and whatever the card says, I'll interpret. And I'm extending it as a challenge that you put into place the message that we come up with. And, I think that if you put it into place, you'll see some good results, because I fucking manifest and I set intentions and I meditate and I channel, and they tell me this shit. So they're not just giving me these messages for nothing. So take the goddamn message, because apparently shit's going to go good for your life. So whatever. Where'd I put the card? Okay. So for this week, we have Here and Now. So here and now is another way of saying be present. And whenever, that's another hippy dippy, like mumbo jumbo term we hear where everyone's like, be present. And you're like, okay. And I think a lot of people think that be present just means pay attention, or be present just means, stop going inwards when you're around other people. But be present is another way of saying you're okay. Because right now, in most of our presence, in the present for most people, you're okay. There's not an earthquake going off. There's not, like, it's an alarm clock, but there's not a tsunami headed for your building. There's not gunshots being fired at you. There's not, someone doesn't have a knife to your throat. I know these are all grim. And I know, obviously, some people and I've experienced some of those, and it's like, it happens, but I'm saying is right now in the present, you are okay. So be present is a way of saying, hey, I know that there's some shit in the future that is making you scared, or is making you uneasy, or is stressing you out. And I know there's some things in your past that hurt you, or some things that disappointed you, or some things that, left a mark on your heart. But right now, in this exact moment, you are okay. And if you could be okay right now, moment to moment, you can continue to be okay. And I know that we have these challenges or these fears or these setbacks or these events, or, of course, like you could be in, Colombia right now, and it's like there's some shit that's going down. So, but it's still our responsibility to learn how, when, where we can be okay moment to moment. So being present is acknowledging that you are okay, but then taking actions and taking steps to remain, to be okay moment to moment. And, we can't get wrapped into that victim mentality of like, well, this is, the country I live in, or, the person I'm dating, or the, whoever my family is. Totally. All the things that you feel, you're validated. All the setbacks that are in your life are true and are happening. But there is always something that can be done to get yourself to a point where you can be okay. And being present is taking that inventory of, okay, I'm okay right now. What are some of the things that make me not feel okay? Do I not feel safe in my apartment? Do I not feel good at my job? Do I not feel loved by my partner? Then to continue that you're okay moment to moment, make those adjustments so you don't have to keep not feeling okay. So being present is you taking the responsibility of your peace and your happiness, and, getting it back into the control of your hands, and not always letting it be, a collection of you not making the choices to make your life better. If everybody just didn't make the right choices and just was just like, whatever, that's life, then it's like everybody's life would suck. So you owe it to yourself to take accountability, to take inventory, to figure out how to be okay now. And again, continuing to do that moment by moment. I know sometimes I speak in circles, but it's just like, that's just who I am. Okay. So yeah, that was this week's episode of The Shamanic. If you are enjoying it, please like, subscribe, share, tell all your friends, leave a comment, donate on Patreon, do what you gotta do. Okay. Help me out. But yes, I've been having tons of fun making this content, and I hope that it's fun listening to, or it's resourceful, or again provides comfort, or entertainment and knowledge. That is, that's the type of shit I like to watch. I like to watch stuff that makes me feel good, but also informs me, but also entertains me. And so that's the shit that I want to put out there. And I hope that I'm doing that for you. Stick tuned. Nope. Stay tuned. Wow. Okay. Stay tuned for more episodes, and I will see you guys next week. Thank you.